Namaste to everyone. A very grand welcome to this weekend's Mahabharat. Yes, now we entered into the weekend 8th of our Mahabharat initiative, and in that, as you all know, that this is the Indian history class number 7. So we have completed around 6 Indian history classes. If you are new to this Mahabharat initiative or this Indian history series, I do first please recommend you to go to the previous classes once. This is because you have to understand the present class, this 8th class of Indian history series. I think you should have a strong foundation of those 6 classes. Then only you will be connected to the content and the story that we are going enjoying through this Indian history series. So just a small list of the classes that what we have discussed till today. If you see in the Indian history class, first class number 1, we have discussed about the origin of the universe and how stars, planets are formed. And in the second Indian history class, we have discussed about how life got created for the first time on the planet Earth. Very important point. And in the third Indian history class, we have discussed about how did Homo sapiens, the modern man, evolve from this different life creatures. And in the fourth Indian history class series, we have discussed that how the modern man who has evolved in the region of Africa, that is Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia regions, how that Homo sapiens species got branched off and out migrated of Africa and reached all other continents of the world. We have discussed that. And in the Indian history class number 5, we have discussed about the Paleolithic man. That means once the man stepped into the land mass of Indian subcontinent. In the class number 5, we have discussed that how that Paleolithic man was living and what were the conditions of that Paleolithic man and how he reacted to those conditions. And not only Paleolithic man, that is from 60,000 years ago from now to around 10,000 years ago from now. So that period we have discussed about Paleolithic man completely. And in the same class, at the latter end of the class, number 5, we have discussed about the Mesolithic man. Mesolithic man. So how the transformation at the global climate level happened and how they triggered the changes in the lifestyle, in the biological system, in the way the human being, the Paleolithic man was living. How a change happened in the Mesolithic period. We have studied in the class number 5. And in the Indian history class number 6, if you see that we have studied about how this Mesolithic change, which actually, the global ice age of Paleolithic period changed to the warmer conditions of Mesolithic period, and the changes which initiated in the Mesolithic period. For example, like warmer temperature, for example, like the change of the flora from being thick, dense forests to around grasslands, to about grasslands. And the moment grasslands have increased, different animal species which depended on the grasslands increased and other animal species got extincted. That means now the man of Mesolithic period has to depend upon what? To hunt which animals? Only those animals which are prevalent around him, and they are depending upon the grasslands. So this connection between the man, grasslands and the animals which were dependent on the grasslands, this triangular connection led to different revolutionary changes in the next period. What is that? In the class number 6, we have discussed about the Neolithic period, Neolithic man. So Neolithic man, what were the specific features we discussed? Agriculture. The moment grasslands increased, he started observing them and he started imitating the process of growing the grassland, that is wheat. The first crop to be, the first of all the crops that man was started growing was barley. So after that, wheat. That means the cereals, the grasslands, the grass crops, he used to grow in the starting periods of the Neolithic period. So agriculture was the unique feature of the Neolithic period. We have discussed that in the class number 6. And how that agriculture started. Once the agriculture started, pottery started because to store the grains. And agriculture demanded many hands of the human labor. That means the man for the first time started living in the communities we have discussed in the class number 6. And the moment this starting of these groups has started, the social relations will be established between the human beings for the first time. Till then, he was an individualistic in nature. Till then, till the Neolithic period, he was only an individual animal, but he never habituated himself to be in a group. But for the first time, in the Neolithic period, on the demand of the agricultural practice, this Homo sapiens came together and started living together. That led to the village communities. Very important development, sir. Very important development in the Neolithic period. We have discussed that in the class number 6. And not only that, agriculture triggered a change in the pottery development. And lot of animals started domesticating, and that means that led to not only agriculture but also animal herding. So there were two different occupations under the umbrella of farming. So this practice of agriculture and animal herding, called as the pastoralism, has come up in the period of Neolithic man. We have discussed that. And at the end of the class number 6, we discussed how this Neolithic man who was living in the small communities, small village communities, having small social rules, very, very rudimentary social rules, and a very ancient form, the prehistoric form of agriculture who was practicing, changed himself into the Chalcolithic man. That means there was a very revolutionary change happened during this Neolithic, end of the Neolithic period. That was the discovery of metal. Yes or no? So we have discussed that at the end of the class number 6, that how this Chalcolithic period, the discovery of the metal, the first metal used by the man was copper. So how he was using the copper? He replaced all the important activities, for example, harvesting of the crop, by the metal tools. He was using utensils for cooking, the metal tools, metal vessels. He was using the ornaments which were made up of the copper metal. That means everything in their daily life was changed to metal. That means there was a starting of metal age, which was the second half of the prehistoric period, as I have said. So this we discussed in class number 6. And in the class number 7, that means the very the very earlier class to this, that was, we discussed about a great ancient prehistoric, not ancient even, but the prehistoric civilization that came up on the mortal remains of this Chalcolithic period. Yes or no? We have discussed about the Indus Valley civilization, which was considered as the glorious period of our Indian prehistory, which was flourished during the period between around 2600 BCE and to 1900 BCE. So this period, 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE, that we considered as the period of mature Harappan period, mature Harappan civilization period, or the mature Indus Valley civilization period. So if you have a very closer look of what we discussed in the last class, before going to the present class, we discussed the general outline of what were the conditions which led to the development of a new civilization, a very glorious civilization like Indus Valley civilization, Harappan civilization, Sindhu Saraswati civilization. So how for the first time this discovery of large mounds of the bricks, large mounds of the buildings inside the soil, when the Britishers were excavating the soil for the construction of the railway lines. We have discussed during the 1870s, when in the Punjab province, the present day Pakistan's and the India's Punjab province, when the Britishers were excavating the soil, we discussed that they found a large mounds of the bricks. But those dumb engineers of the British Empire could not able to think the source of those bricks, but they just utilized them. They utilized them irrationally, without any proper thinking about their origin. They utilized them. They carried off those mounds of the buildings, and unintentionally they actually destroyed the very most prehistoric sites of our culture. But later, around 1910 and 20s, if you see the archaeology, when the discipline of archaeology got matured, and the first director general of the Indian archaeology, modern Indian archaeology discipline. He was the Alexander Cunningham. So this was the person who actually recognized that no, these are not just mounds of the bricks, but this was the ancient prehistoric culture of India. There was a huge civilization. So those buildings of the bricks, which were made of the bricks, actually were a part of great civilization. So he was the first person to be, recognized the fact, and under his leadership, this excavation of different sites around this Harappa site started, and that led to the revolutionary discovery of a new civilization called Indus Valley civilization, called Harappan civilization. So we have discussed all these facts, that what were the incidents which led to the discovery of this Indus Valley sites. So this is what we have discussed, the general outline of Indus Valley civilization in the last class. So now we entered into the present class, that is the weekend 8th of the Mahabharat series and Indian history class number 7. As I have said, this class we are going to discuss the factual points about the Indus Valley civilization. Factual points, that means what exactly we found there. Why that period of 2600 BC to 1900 BC was considered as the most revolutionary, glorious period of India. Why? So let us see. Sir, let me remind you that this class is very important for all the examinations. You say UPSC, you can say PSCs, Public Service Commission examinations of every state. In almost all the examinations, this lecture, this Indus Valley civilization lecture that we are going to have today is very, very important than the previous lecture. That is the general outline. It was not about examinations, the last class, but this class it is having lot of relevance in every examination. So please listen carefully, not only about examinations, but as I have always, I have been saying that to understand the Mahabharat, to understand the great India, this part of the lecture is very, very important. To know the answer that why the politicians of India will always look back and take pride in saying that we were the host of a very ancient civilization of India, ancient civilization of the world. Why normally they do like that? Why did they take pride in that? We have to know, right? Why Indus Valley civilization or Harappan civilization period, that is from 2600 BC to around 1900 BC, was much special, was much glorious. To be, was that an exaggeration? Was that an exaggeration? Or was that, as we informally say, the self projection? Or is it really worthful to say like that? Are the statements worthful actually in themselves? So to know all these answers, let us discuss what is the importance of Indus Valley civilization and why India always takes pride in looking back to this period. Sir, there are many first time activities you will say in this period. First time. In the history of the human species, in the prehistory of India, you will see many first time activities started in this period, Indus Valley civilization period. So, the first point to be remembered is the period of Indus Valley civilization is from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. So this is the period. That means from now, if we see, it was 4600 years ago to around 4000 years ago. That was the period. That means 4000 years back story we are going to narrate today and we are going to study today. Now, sir, if you see the 12th class NCERT textbook of Indian history, which was titled as Themes in Indian History Part 1. So you can go through that. If you see the first theme of this book, which deals with the themes of Indian history, the first theme you see the title as Bricks, Beads and Bones. The theme 1, Bricks, Beads and Bones, and the tagline you see was Harappan civilization. Why? What these bricks have the connection with Indus Valley civilization? What this beads, beads were a part of ornamental, ornaments, a small rounded stones from which a string will be, tied to the neck. So that ornamental one, we call that as beads. And what they have connection with the Harappan civilization? And bones. What actually these bones have to do with Harappan civilization? Why the title was like that? Bricks, beads and bones. Sir, if you see, to study a particular period, to name a particular period, you should have some specific reasons. Yes or no? In the same way, in the same example, for example, if you see from 1947, we call India as modern independent India. Before 1947, we call it as British India. That's about the same geographical area, we were naming it differently before and after 1947. Why? Because there was unique principles upon which the country and the region was operating before and after 1947. Before 1947, the rulers were different, the polity was different, the economy was different, the way of operation of governance was different, and after 1947, the country was ruled in a different domain. So to name the periods, to name the events, they must deserve it through some unique and special distinctive features. Yes or no? So, when we name Indus Valley civilization period, Harappan civilization period, that period must also having some certain unique and the distinctive features. What was happening in India in that period, 2600 BC to 1900 BC? Now let's, as I have already said, the important point that archaeology has a lot of contribution to the prehistory study. Archaeology. So when archaeologists were excavating the sites, as I have said, in the northwestern portion of the Indian subcontinent, northwestern portion, for example, it was ranging from Afghanistan in the north to Jammu and Kashmir in the northeast, to Gujarat and Rajasthan in the southeast, and to till the Baluchistan region and the Sindh region of the Pakistan in the west. So this was the area in which the Indus Valley civilization was flourished. The northwestern portion of the Indus in Indian subcontinent. So the present day Pakistan was actually the epicenter of this Indus Valley civilization period. So when Alexander Cunningham, when he first discovered that this was a civilization actually, he stopped all the construction activities around the site, the first discovered site, Harappa, and he took over the control because he was the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India in 1920s. So once he discovered the fact that the large mounds of the bricks were actually not, not having valueless history, he recognized the fact that they were a part of a great civilization. So he took the control of the site. The first site to be discovered as a part of Indus Valley civilization was Harappa. Harappa. That's the reason the complete civilization was named after it as Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization. Now he took the control of the site, Harappa. So he was too enthusiastic. When he excavated the complete site, he discovered lot of very important mind-striking features. For example, to say a large buildings of 2 and 3 story buildings, multiple storied buildings, sir. During the period of 2600 BC, you can imagine 4000 years back, we were having in India 2 and 3 storied buildings, multiple storied buildings. Can it not be a reason to study, to deserve a study on it? Yes or no? So this is how Alexander Cunningham, under the leadership of him, the Archaeological Survey of India started excavating the sites around the Harappa city also. The Harappa, excavated Harappa site, around that they started digging. They took the control of the areas from the government and they started digging and excavating the surrounding areas. And for a shock, if you see, there were approximately 8 to 9 sites. Sir, 8 to 9 sites they discovered around the Harappa city, around the Indus river. They were very, very shocked. Similar in nature. In every site, the type of buildings were similar, the type of planning was similar. That means the moment you see similar buildings everywhere, in every site, the construction was similar, the type of layout of the cities was similar. Is that a sign to say that they were contemporary and they were a part of one particular culture? Yes or no? Just like that. After finding out 8 to 9 cities, 8 to 9 excavatory sites, the archaeologists and the historians have named it as no, it was not just one site. It was combination of different sites, around 8 to 9 cities. That means they named it as a Harappan civilization, because all cities which were excavated were similar to the first city which was discovered, that was Harappa. So they named it as Harappan civilization. Now, sir, when they were excavating, in every site they were finding some set of objects, some group of objects. In every site they were common. For example, when they were excavating in Harappa area, they were finding, some ornaments, some seals, some beads, some type of bones, some type of buildings, etc. And when they go to some other site of, which was excavating around the Harappa city, in the next site, they were getting the same type of seals, same type of beads, same type of buildings, etc. That means every city, every excavated site, the 8 to 9 sites of that period, 2600 BC to 1900 BC, they were using the same type of tools, the same type of materials, the same type of utensils. That means the culture of that period was one. All cities were belonging to one culture. So they named it as Harappan civilization. Why Harappan? Because Harappa city was the first to be discovered among 8 to 9 cities. Actually, Harappan civilization comprising of how many cities? Around 8 to 9 cities. But the first city was Harappa. There might be having larger cities than Harappa also among those 8 to 9. But still the naming was on the Harappa because first site to be discovered. Now, sir, as I have said, there were some group of objects. They were repeatedly getting in every site. And this group of objects which were unique, which were distinct to a particular period of time, archaeologists will call them as culture. Sir, culture, as I have said, they were a group of objects. Culture means everything about cult. Cult means a group of people. Everything about them, the food, the clothing, the dressing, the language, the script, the economic tools, whatever the types of animals they were familiar with, the music, the art, everything was a part of culture. Everything around a cult is called as culture. So in the same way, when you see in the archaeological perspective, the group of objects which they were getting repeatedly in every city of Harappan civilization, they were unique in nature. Same type of objects they were getting in all the cities, in all the excavated sites. So they termed it as a unique culture and they named it as Harappan culture. So those set of objects comes under a particular culture called as Harappan culture. So let us see what were the objects they were getting in those periods. Sir, out of all the group of objects that they were getting while excavating in the Harappan cities, the most distinctive feature of Harappan civilization or Indus Valley civilization was Harappan seal. Harappan seal. What is meant by seal? Seal is, just like it was a small stone. It was a small carved stone on which imprints of certain authority, imprints. Something will be written on that. Some animal motifs will be there on that. And this seal, the small stone, it's like a pass. If you see in our today's language, we can say it as for example, like a visa to get permission to access some places or to get authorized the Indian government stamp like that. This Harappan seal was the most distinctive artifact of all the group of objects that we were getting while excavating in that particular site. Harappan seal. Sir, if you see the Harappan seal, it was most distinctive because this small Harappan seal, which was made up of a stone called as steatite. Very important point, sir. Steatite is a stone upon which these Harappan seals were made. And in every city we found these Harappan seals. And what was written on them? On the seals, what was actually there? So if you see in every city where these Harappan seals were found in mounds, in large number, on every seal we found something has written on the top. Some signs were written on the top. That must be a script actually. But the most interesting part here is to say this Indus Valley civilization script. This was the most ancient scripts of the world, which was contemporary to the Mesopotamian script, which was contemporary to the Egyptian script. But the Egyptian script was deciphered. Mesopotamian script was deciphered. That means we could understand what they were writing. But very interestingly, the Indus Valley civilization script, which was written on every seal, Harappan seal, was till today it was undeciphered. The historians could not able to understand what they are actually writing. The script was completely undeciphered even till today. We don't know what they wrote on the seals. We could know the contemporary seals script, Egyptian script, Mesopotamian script. We could able to decipher. We now can understand what they were writing on them. But this is the only script, Indus Valley civilization script, which even till today left undeciphered. Very important point, sir. That means we don't know what they were writing on that. So with this point I can say what we know about Indus Valley civilization is definitely not from the script, because the script itself was undeciphered. So almost 80 to 90% of the story that we know about that period was actually we found from some other things apart from the not from the script. So this was an area of research. These history studied students who were doing PhDs in history, for them this is a challenge. So this is a scope of domain, this is an area of domain to work upon, to decipher the Indus Valley civilization script. Because if we can decipher the script, there might be having a lot of opportunity to study what actually they were writing on them, what they were saying, what the instructions they were writing, whether they are instructions or whether they are names, we don't know. So that is an area of research, and that is going on. So the first part of the seal, on the seal there was a script, and the signs of the script were undeciphered. And the most unique feature is that if you see the script, the Harappan script, you will see different signs, and among all the signs, just like in our English script we have A, B, C, D, E, F. In our Telugu script we have A, E, E. Just like that, in this Indus Valley civilization script there were some pictorial representations. Just like a line, there will be a line, there will be some U-like sign. This is one sign in the script. And the most frequently used sign in the Indus Valley civilization script was similar to a fish. in most of the Indus Valley civilization script, we could see that there is a symbol of fish. That means fish might be very important to them. Yes or no? Fish might be, that fish probably a part of their diet. We don't know, but that's how we reconstruct the history. So the most frequently used sign of this Indus Valley civilization script was fish. Now, so on the top of the seal we have script. It was undeciphered, and the most frequently used sign of this script was fish. Now, on the central and the bottom portion of the seal, I am describing about the seal, right? The first Harappan seal. On the top it will have a script, and in the bottom, if you see, there were animal motifs, images, animal imprints. The most frequently seen, observed animal motif was of a one-horned animal. There was a one-horned animal on every Harappan seal. One-horned animal. That means that animal might be most important and most revered animal. It was the most revered object by the people of Indus Valley civilization. Yes or no? So this Harappan seal, which was having a script and an animal motif, was most distinctive artifacts of the complete Indus Valley civilization culture, the group of objects. Now, we don't know the script, we undeciphered it, but still we know a great deal about the Indus Valley civilization. How could we know that? We could know by studying the leftover things. If not the written script, there will be lot many leftover things which were left over by the people of Indus Valley civilization when they perished in the time. People will perish, but the things they used will never perish. Physical material will never perish. So that's how, by studying those physical materials which were left over in the sites of the Harappan civilization cities, we could find out the story, we could find out the way of life of them. So let us see what we found, what was the story, how the people were living there, etc. So first thing is, we have to know about the terminology, that what were the names that we associate to this period. One name we associate to this period of 2600 BC to 1900 BC was Indus Valley civilization. Why Indus Valley civilization? Because, sir, if you see, during the medieval period, that is after 1400s and 1500s, when Iranians for the first time came near to the border of Indian subcontinent, when they came near to that, they normally, Iranians and Greeks, when Alexander has come near to that, before 0 AD, just before that, in the first BC era, when Alexander has come very near to the Indian subcontinent, he came almost near to the river Indus with his, all the soldiers. And these Persian people and the Greek people, they called the people who are to the east of the Indus Valley as Sindhus, because they don't claim, they don't sound E. This was the weakness of Greeks. They don't sound E, they call it as C. So Indus, the people who are east to the Indus, were called by the Greeks as Sindhus. That's how we call this civilization also as Sindhu civilization. And Greeks normally call the Indus river, the Sindhu river, as Indus, because there was a mismatching of pronunciation between C and E for Greeks. So actually it was Sindhu river, but they call it as Indus river. So just because the civilization was flourished around the Indus river, we call this as Indus Valley civilization. Just because the Greeks could not able to call the pronunciation E, we normally call it as Sindhu civilization, and this is also called as the Harappan civilization. Why? Already told you. Because the first site to be discovered was Harappa, so the same civilization called as Harappan civilization. Same period was called with different names. And the another name to this civilization was Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Very important point, Sindhu Saraswati. Why? Because we believe, our historians believe that along with the river Sindhu, the present day Indus, there was having another river between which this civilization flourished, and that another river was, Saraswati river. It was mentioned in the after periods of Indus Valley civilization, that was in Rig Veda, the first Veda. It was mentioned, the river Saraswati, but after that we could not trace it. It might have dried up. So our historians, due to this fact of the flourishing of a civilization between two rivers, Indus river and the Saraswati river, this civilization was called as Sindhu Saraswati civilization. So this is the terminology we have to be very careful with. Everything is same. Sindhu civilization, Indus Valley civilization, Harappan civilization, Sindhu Saraswati civilization. Everything was actually referring to the period called 2600 BC to 1900 BC. Now, what was the region in which this flourished? Already I told you. In the north, it extended till the Afghanistan. In the northeast, it was extended till Jammu and Kashmir. And in the eastern side, it was extended, this civilization was extended, covered the areas of even Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab in the eastern side. And on the western side, it was covered the Pakistan portion, that is the Sindh province of the present day Pakistan, the Baluchistan province, which was near to the Arabian Sea. So this was the northwestern region, Afghanistan area, Jammu Kashmir area, Gujarat, Punjab, Rajasthan, Sindh province and Baluchistan province. This was the area in which, this civilization got flourished. So this was the region which was actually associated with the Indus Valley civilization around the, Indus river. Now, sir, if you see, I have been telling the period as 2600 BC to 1900 BC. But when we see the timeline, Neolithic period ended at 4000 BC. From 8000 BC to 4000 BC, it was Neolithic period. After that, at 4000 BC, metal age started. First stage was, copper age. 4000 BC to around 3000 BC. So once copper was discovered, by 3000 BC, if you see, there was another the metals were keep on discovering, and the next metal discovered was tin. The second metal to be discovered by the human species was tin. So this copper and tin, after 3000 BC, they both were alloyed together by the human beings. They were alloyed, and another metal which is an alloy of these two metals, copper and tin, is called as bronze. So from 3000 BC, we call that period as the Bronze Age, the second age of the metal age. After copper age, this was the Bronze Age. So Bronze Age is actually the age in which the Indus Valley civilization flourished. Yes or no? Very important point. From 3000, the bronze has discovered from 3000 BC to 2600 BC. So around that 400 years, what was happening? I am saying the Indus Valley civilization from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. But what was happening between 3000 and 2600? And that period, archaeologists refer to that period, 3000 BC to just before the Indus Valley civilization period. 2600 BC to 1900 is the Indus Valley civilization period. Just before that, from 3000 to 2600 BC, that small gap, 400 years period, actually archaeologists refer to that period as early Harappan period. Early Harappan culture, very important point, sir. What was the period of early Harappan culture? 3000 to 2600 BC. Why? Why archaeologists call it as early Harappan period? It is because, sir, in this region, where the northwestern region, the mature Harappan period actually, which was referred to as Harappan period, was flourished. But in the same area, when they still excavated, just beneath them, beneath the layers of Indus Valley Civilization period, they found some settlements, but which were not much well developed, as in the case of the layer of Indus Valley Civilization sites like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, Banavali, Raki Ghadi, Mithal Mithal, Dholavira. These were the sites, 8 to 9 sites of Indus Valley, mature Harappan period cities. But before that, in the same area, there were some settlements like small houses, mud brick houses. There were not large buildings. There were no large buildings. But they are different from Neolithic period and Chalcolithic period. That means that is a transition period between Copper Age and this Indus Valley Civilization age. A very rudimentary settlements, very ancient, prehistoric, initial settlements, we can say. Before these Harappan cities have come up, in the same area, some smaller settlements came up, and archaeologists referred as early Harappan period from 3000 to 2600 BC. And after 1900 BC, if you see, from 2600 BC to 1900 BC, it was mature Harappan period, Indus Valley Civilization period, Harappan culture we call it as mature one. But after 1900 BC to till 1500 BC, if you see, again there was a gap. By 1500, now our Vedic period starts. Vedic, we call it as Vedic period from 1500 BC. But from 1900 BC to 1500, what was happening? After Harappan, mature Harappan period, what was happening in that period? So archaeologists called that period as latter Harappan culture. So now, literally to say, from 3000 BCE to 1500 BCE, so this 1500 years period was actually the Harappan culture. In that, so Harappan culture was divided into 3 portions. One is early Harappan period from 3000 to 2600 BCE. Then the actual Harappan civilization period, mature Harappan civilization period from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. Then latter Harappan civilization period from 1900 BCE to 1500 BCE. So this is the period that we are going to study. So what are the features of early Harappan period? What we found in the mature Harappan period and latter Harappan period? Let us see. Sir, in the early Harappan period, if you see, we found a distinctive pottery which was very distinctive from the previous periods, Neolithic period, Chalcolithic period. In the Neolithic period, first time pottery, the technique of pottery has come up. Just with clay they used to make the pot. In the Chalcolithic and starting of Bronze Age period, we see these pots were designed. That means on the red color pot there were some black designs. We call them as black on red wear technique, black on red wear. So distinctive pottery we see in the early Harappan periods, and the settlements were very smaller settlements, as I have said, because the larger cities were to come in the latter period, that is in the Harappan period, actual mature Harappan period. In the early Harappan period there were no large buildings, so very smaller settlements. Agriculture was there because agriculture started in Neolithic period itself. So agriculture was there, lot of grains we found there, food grains, the charred burnt grains we found there, the remains of them. Pastoralism was found there. Pastoralism means people were herding the animals, rearing the animals. We found the bones of them. In the early Harappan period, these were the conditions, like they were herding the animals, they were doing agriculture, the premature agriculture, and they were residing in smaller settlements. Early Harappan period was just like a very, very, very poor village-like culture. That was the early Harappan period. So by 2600 BC, if you see, there was a huge contrast between these primitive agriculture technique, pastoralism, low settlements, like that. These conditions suddenly changed to larger cities, huge trade, large buildings, everything. So cities came up. So there was a complete contrast. So historians will normally say there must be having some break between this early Harappan period and latter Harappan period in the same area, in the same northwestern period, northwestern India, Indian subcontinent. So what were the sites of early Harappan period? Let's see. There were 4 important sites. As I have said, in the Harappan period we have 8 to 9 important sites, but in early Harappan period we have 4 important sites. If you see in the region of the present day Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and the Punjab of Pakistan, that area, there was an early Harappan site called as Siswal, Siswal, Siswal. So Siswal is a group of clusters. It's a cluster of settlements, a smaller settlements, upon which later many cities have come up. We will discuss them in the next period. So that Siswal was one group of settlements which was belonged to early Harappan period. And now if you go to Pakistan area, we have 3 important sites of early Harappan period. One site is towards the Arabian Sea. Towards the Arabian Sea, that is the southern Pakistan. We call that as Baluchistan, the present day Baluchistan. We have a site called as Amri Nal. So Siswal is a site belonging to early Harappan period. Then another site in the Pakistan area, southern Pakistan, that is Amri Nal. So Amri Nal was also belonging to the this early Harappan period. Now in the present, present Sindh province of Pakistan, the Sindh province, we were having 2 important early Harappan sites. Those were, one is Kot Diji, K-O-T, Kot D-I-J-I, Diji. So this Kot Diji was also one cluster of settlements where this early Harappan culture was flourished. Early Harappan, I am saying, not the cities. Early little village communities, smaller settlements, smaller pottery, etc. And another one was just to the west of this, another site called as Damb Sadat. Damb Sadat. So these were the 4 important sites of early Harappan period. Siswal in present day Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab area. Amri Nal in the southern Pakistan area. This Kot Diji in the present day Sindh province. And the Damb Sadat. This was on the western side of the Pakistan. So these were the 4 sites of early Harappan period from 3000 to 2600. But why we call it as early Harappan? Even though large cities were absent, even though large trade was absent, there were no specific unique features like in the next period, that is mature Harappan period. But still we are calling it as early Harappan. Why? Because there was one commonality archaeologists found, the historians found, that was subsistence technology, the subsistence strategy. Sir, if you see early Harappan settlements, the food production, the food distribution and the food consumption. Food production is by agriculture, food distribution is by trade, food consumption is by retail trade. So all this food production, distribution and consumption, this is a part of economy. We call this as commonly as economy. So the economy was subsistence in their strategy. Subsistence, that means they are not trading with other people for their food. They may be trading for other precious stones, semi-precious stones, ornaments, etc. But for food, they were not trading with other areas of the world. So that was completely closed economy, subsistence economy. That was the important feature of this early Harappan period. The same feature we found in the mature Harappan period and also in the latter Harappan period. Because this commonality was there, the subsistence strategy, 3 periods were actually considered as Harappan, but early Harappan, actual Harappan, that is mature Harappan, and latter Harappan period. Now let us come to the actual mature Harappan period, that is from 2600 BC to 1900 BC. What was happening? As I have said, there were 4 sites which were belonged to early Harappan period. On the remains of those sites, in the same places, the next larger cities have come up. Next larger cities of mature Harappan city, mature Harappan civilization come up. What were they? Sir, there were around 8 to 9 cities which were belonged to this period, 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. In the Haryana, let us see in the Haryana, we have some sites of Harappan civilization. They are Raki Ghadi, very important sites are Raki Ghadi. Banavali is another site, very important site. Mitha Mittal, this is the third important site. And in the Rajasthan, the northern Rajasthan, we found Harappan city Kalibangan. And in the Gujarat area of our country, we found the Harappan cities like Dholavira. In the Saurashtra region. We found the next site was Rangeshwar, Rangpur, Nageshwar, Dholavira. These were the Lothal. These were the sites which we found in the India, the present day India. Harappan sites. What were they? Again I am repeating, very important. The naming is very important. That's why I am repeating, keep on repeating them. The sites were Harappan cities found in the present day India were from north to south if we see. In the Jammu and Kashmir we have Manda, Manda, Manda. In the Haryana we have Raki Ghadi, Banavali and Mitha Mittal. And in the Rajasthan we found the Kalibangan. In the Gujarat we found Dholavira, Lothal, Rangpur and Nageshwar. So these were the sites of Harappan in India. And in the Pakistan region we found the cities like Harappa, very important city. This is in present day Pakistan, not in India. Mohenjo-daro is one city we found belonging to that period. Mohenjo-daro is another city, present Sindhu province of Pakistan. Amri is one city which is still in the present day Pakistan, Baluchistan region. Amri. And another city was Kot Diji. It was also there, as I have said, it was also a early Harappan settlement. The same city was developed in the same area. And another one was Balakot. In the southern region of Pakistan, we found Balakot in the Baluchistan region. So that Balakot was also one of the city of Harappan civilization. And to the most western part of the Pakistan, if you see, there was one site belonging to this Harappan period. It was Sukta Jandor. Sukta Jandor, in the border, to the border of Iran and Pakistan, we found that city. Sukta Jandor. So these were around 8 to 10 cities. Raki Ghadi, Banavali, Manda, Mitha Mittal, Kalibangan, Lothal, Dholavira, Nageshwar, Rangpur, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Amri, Balakot and Sutga Jandor. These were 10 to 11 cities which were contemporary to each other, which flourished with the same culture, same type of building, same type of layout, same type of, might be the practices also, their way of living also. That's why they belong to a particular civilization called as Harappan civilization. So these were the cities. Now, let us come to a very important portion of their life. That is, what were this Indus Valley civilization, this Harappan civilization people in all these 9 cities, what the food they were eating, what these people were actually eating. Very important domain to study. How could we come to know what they ate 4,000 years ago from now? How could we come to know? In the same way, sir, please remember, archaeology is very, very, very important, connecting bridge between history and prehistory and the present. Sir, there was, archaeologists always look for evidence to reconstruct the history. So what you might be thinking, what might be the evidence to know about the food, the dietary practices of them? Just think, what we have to look for to know about their food practices. Do you know what archaeologists have looked for? They looked for the charred, the burnt grains and seeds. which were left over in those cities, in those areas of Harappan period. Why? So archaeologists, what they do, normally they pick out these charred grains, charred seeds, and because they are charred, they did not undergo decomposition, so they have lasted even till today. Charred grains will always last for years, for thousands of years. But the normal grains will never last. They will decompose in the soil. But the charred ones, the burnt seeds, they will remain forever. That they became the evidence for us, crucial evidence for us to study about the food practices of them. So what archaeologists done? They took these charred pieces of grain and seeds which were found in these cities, excavated cities. They go to the laboratory and they date back the grains to know which period they belong to. How they do normally date back? We call the practice of dating back as dating techniques. So one of the technique to date through the material remains was carbon dating method. So in every organic substance, carbon will be present. So normally there will be isotopes, because carbon etc. radioactive mechanism always happens within the atom. So what these archaeologists looked for was how these carbon isotopes were decaying over the years. So based on because we know the complete nature of the isotope life, half-life period of carbon isotope, shelf life period of carbon isotope, we will have some formula, the standard formula. So by the amount of isotopes which are left over, which are undecayed, by measuring that amount, we date back that grain to the period, the time. So by that we come to know that those food grains and seeds were dating actually back to 2600 BC and 1900 BC. Carbon dating method. It's a complex process, but still I have given you the basic idea. So what they were eating, what they find in the laboratory, which grains they were, which seeds they were eating. So one conclusion was that Indus Valley civilization people, Harappan civilization people were eating both vegetarian and non-vegetarian diet. So the vegetarian diet, if you see, they were eating wheat. We found the charred grains of remains of wheat, barley, lentil, and chickpea they were using. They were eating chickpeas. Chickpea, they are peas, a class of peanuts. Not only them, sir, in the Gujarat area, if you see, they were eating millets. So wheat, barley, lentil, millets, chickpea, these were the dietary composition of the Indus Valley civilization period, and the mostly recurring mortal remains were of wheat. So wheat was most prevalent. This was the vegetarian diet of them: wheat, barley, lentil, millets, and chickpea. And the non-vegetarian diet, how could we come to know that? What they were eating, the people of Indus Valley period, what they were eating? Just like archaeologists looked for the charred grains and burnt seeds, to know the non-vegetarian diet, these archaeozoologists, they looked for animal bones, the remains of animal bones. So this became the evidence now. So they go to the site again, Harappan city, Mohenjo-daro city, every city they go, archaeologists, and they will take the bones, they will go to the laboratory and they will, reconstruct to which animal, to which species this bone belongs to. That is how they come to know which animals were familiar with these people and these people familiar with in return. Maybe they were eating them, maybe they were using them for some other practices like agriculture, etc. We don't know, but they were familiar with those animals because we found the animal bones in the cities. And archaeozoologists, they have given a list of animals which were familiar to this Indus Valley civilization period. This period, 2600 BC to 1900 BC. What were the animals? Very important. In every examinations, these will come as maybe match the following, etc. So the first domesticated animals we found in these cities were, the bones we found in these cities were sheep, We found many bones of sheep, many bones of goat we found, many bones of pig we found, many bones of cattle and buffalo we found. So sheep, goat, buffalo, cattle, pig, these were the domesticated animals. So they were domesticating them by then. By 2600 BCE, this in the cities, people were domesticating sheep, people were domesticating goat, because pastoralism was there, prevalent. What is pastoralism? Herding of animals, rearing of animals, along with agriculture. They were doing that. That means they were also eating them on the occasions, special occasions maybe. They were, eating the meat of them, sheep, goat, etc. That is the non-vegetarian diet we could reconstruct. And very interestingly, not only these domesticated animals, we found the bones of wild animals also in the cities. Wild animals, sir. What were they? For example, if you see, we found the wild bones of the wild boar. Boar. Do you know boar, right? So the bones of wild boar and wild deer they found. Archaeologists. And very interestingly, they found the bones of wild gharial. See, this boar, deer, gharial, they were wild animals actually. That means, because we found these bones in the cities, that means they were eating them, they were taking the meat of them, definitely. We don't know whether they're directly hunting these animals, wild animals, or maybe they are trading with some surrounding hunting communities. We don't know. Hunting tribe communities. Maybe they are trading for grains. In exchange of grains, they might be trading with, they might be getting back the meat, live meat of wild animals, which might be hunted by some other tribes, if not the people directly, people of the cities. So this is the non-vegetarian diet: sheep, goat, buffalo, pig, cattle, wild boars, wild deer, wild gharial, etc. This was actually the food composition that they were eating. This was a part of culture. That's why we are studying the culture. It's a part of culture. Now we are going to discuss the most important, sir, why we actually feel very proud to say that we belong to India. We belong to such a country which has hosted the glorious civilization in the prehistory, that is Indus Valley civilization. What was the main reason why we take pride? Now we are going to tell that. So let us discuss about the agricultural techniques, what they were, the Indus Valley civilization people, what techniques they were employing in agriculture practice. First of all, how could we know that agriculture was prevalent? Without evidence, sir, again I am repeating the point, without evidence and without rational evidence material, we should not conclude anything in life, sir, anything in life. Let us leave about studies, academic domain. In life, without rational thinking, without reason-based arguments, without evidence, we should not believe in anything. That becomes an irrational thinking if we believe in. Blind belief should always, be avoided. So how could we come to know that agriculture was prevalent in this Indus Valley civilization period? Sir, already I told you that we always look for the mounds of grains, the burnt grains, the leftover grains. If you have large mounds of grain, that means agriculture was there. If there was no agriculture, there is no point to get much mounds of grains. Yes or no? So if you found the grains stored in every city, granaries, there are some cities in which granaries were constructed to store the grains. That means there must be agriculture. If not, it was not possible. So by the evidence of the presence of grains, we could come to the conclusion that agriculture was prevalent. First point. Now, yes, we could come to know that agriculture was prevalent, but we could not know, even till today we are not knowing that what agricultural practices they were using. Practices, we don't know, because if material remains were there, we can think and narrate the story. But agricultural practice is an event is an action, it's not a material. So we cannot know how they are actually planting. For example, if you see, there are two methods present day in the present day agriculture farming. We have two methods of planting a crop. One method is broadcasting of the seeds. We will first make sure that furrows will be made in the soil. We call it as plowing, and then we will broadcast the seeds once the first rain has come in the monsoon season. So broadcasting was one technique of sowing the plant, and another technique was we use normally the present day people. Another technique for rice, you may see in village communities, in villages, for rice, paddy, you don't broadcast the seeds like for cotton, like for maize. We don't broadcast. What we do? We first set up in our home itself. We first set up a small soil, and in the soil we will sow the grains of this paddy, rice, and after 4 or 5 days we will see paddy plants, saplings will come out, and then we go to the field. We take these small saplings and we go to the field, actual field, and we transplant them. This is the process, we call it as transplantation technique. Not directly we throw the seeds in the actual field, but once the saplings were grown, we go to the actual field and we will plant them, replant them. Transplantation technique. So there were two methods of growing the plants, agriculture. One is broadcasting the seeds, another one is transplantation. We do know today, but what they were employing, which technique they were employing to grow the crops, we don't know. Maybe broadcasting technique like scattering of the seeds in the direct field itself, or maybe transplantation technique. Actually, transplantation technique was most recent one, modern technique. So definitely they might be broadcasting the seeds. This was one agricultural technique, and let us see what were the most significant features of agriculture of this Indus Valley civilization period. Sir, when these archaeologists went to the cities of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, etc., they found some toys, very interesting toys, which were made of a material called as terracotta. Terracotta. What is this terracotta? It is a material with which toys were made. What is this terracotta? Terracotta is nothing, sir, nothing. It is just, you don't scare. You should not scare by listening the term. Terracotta is nothing but, first they will take the soil, that is clay. They will add some water. So it is a clay, now wet clay. And they will pour this wet clay in a vessel and they will heat it. They will heat it. That is the process of baking. Yes or no? So baked clay is called as a terracotta. Nothing but. Once the baked clay is dried up, it becomes too hard that any shape you made out of it will remain as that. So this is the way toys were made out of it. First they will take the soil, clay, they will add water and they will bake it, baking of clay, and then they will make it when it is not dried up. When it is wet itself, they will make a shape out of it and they will keep it aside. Once it dried up, it becomes too hard and it is now a toy. So those toys which were made in the Indus Valley period, they remained even till today, sir. So you can imagine the technique, how great technique they were using to make the toys. But why I am saying about toys? Here lies the interesting point. Sir, in every city we found the toy models which were made up of terracotta of plow. Plow, in Hindi we call it as hull. So plow, we found the toys of plow, terracotta toys of plow. So we could very easily know that they were using plow. That means the people of Indus Valley civilization were knowing the technique of plowing technology they know. Very important, sir. Plowing technology. It's a revolutionary technology. Now, where we found these toys of plow? Very important for examination, sir. Where? Out of all these cities, in which cities we found the toys, terracotta toys of plough. One site where we found this toy of plough is in Cholistan, in the present day Pakistan, just adjacent to the Rajasthan. You will see Cholistan. In the Cholistan Harappan site, we found the terracotta toys of plough. And just to the east of it, in India, we found Rajasthan. Thar desert is extended in India and Pakistan. So the western portion is called as Cholistan. In India, we call it as Rajasthan. In Cholistan, we found the toys of plough, terracotta toys, and even in the Rajasthan. What was the site which is in Rajasthan, Harappan site? Kalibangan. So in the Kalibangan site, we found the toy of plough of terracotta material. So these were the two sites where we found this toy model of the plough, Cholistan and Kalibangan. Now that means we now can clearly say that the people of Indus Valley civilization were knowing the technique of ploughing. Now, not only this, very interesting point is now to be told that in the Kalibangan, not only the toy model of terracotta plough, but even we found the ploughed field. We found the ploughed field, sir, as it is. Ploughed fields we found. When we were excavating layer by layer, we found a layer of the soil where it was ploughed. Very interesting. And do you know how it was ploughed? In today, if you see today's farming, how we normally plough the soil? We normally make furrows. Furrows means the small channel like things. With the plough, we make some cracks, yes or no, in the soil. So those we call it as furrows. One set of furrows will go in the parallel on the field in the parallel direction, and another set of plough was actually normally made in the transverse direction. So at right angles to each other, we normally plough. This is the advanced form of, right now in village communities we employ this, right angle two set of furrows we make in the soil. That's we call it as ploughing. The same technique in Kalibangan, we found a layer of soil where two sets of furrows were made at right angles to each other, sir. 4,000 years back, there was ploughing technology. The field was ploughed. And here lies the actual greatness of those people. Because why we make two sets of furrows, one in parallel direction, one in transverse direction? Why we normally make those two sets of furrows in the soil? It is because to grow two crops together. For example, right now if you see, we grow cotton and mirchi together, cotton and some vegetable plants, vegetable crop together. Normally we do that, right? Yes or no? Because not to monopolize the soil. Yes or no? To diversify the soil, a small portion of our soil will be reserved for vegetables, and some other major portion will be reserved for cash crops, food and cash crops. Combinedly we grow. This technique of multiple cropping, this technique of intercropping, we call it as, this was known to the Indus Valley civilization people. That means, yes or no? Because they were we found the two sets of furrows. That means they must be knowing this technique of multiple cropping, intercropping. They might be growing two different sets of crop on the same soil in the same season. How great advanced agriculture they were knowing by 2600 BC itself. That's where we take pride in, because we are majorly agricultural country. We take pride in. Ploughing technology was there, broadcasting technique they know. Not only that, multiple cropping and intercropping technique they know. This is how we reconstruct the history. Now, sir, not only that, to harvest the crop, normally we should have some tools. Today, how we harvest the crop manually. Right now we are using machines. But just before some 5 to 10 years back, how we were doing harvesting the crop? We harvest the crop through the usage of the sickles. Yes or no? Sickles, the tools, metal tools, iron sickles. But how they were doing? Sir, they were cutting the crop. That is, we call it as harvesting process. They were doing it through the stone blades. Stone blades they made, very polished, fine, sharp stone blades they made, and they were harvesting through them. Harvesting technology they know. And to the stone blades we were also finding that some wooden handles were fixed. Not directly the stone blades were using, they were fixing some handles, wooden handles to them. All this material we were finding in the excavated cities of Harappan period. See how great the story is, reconstructed with the artifacts. This is how we do, sir. This is why we have to study, scientifically, not emotionally, not, through nationalism, extreme nationalism, etc. Scientifically, when you see, we can construct how the economy was there, how the people were, what they were eating, how they were doing agriculture. Sir, this is just 20% of the technique they were knowing, which I said. Right now, you will wonder if I say that the region, if you see the region of Harappan civilization, it was completely in northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. That means Punjab of India, Haryana of India, Jammu Kashmir of India, Rajasthan of India, Gujarat of India, Punjab of Pakistan, Sindh province of Pakistan. So all this area, it was not 100% rain-fed area. It is a semi-arid region, sir. You have to remember this. This was a semi-arid region. That means the amount of rainfall they receive in a particular year will be equals to or less than 50%, which was required to grow a crop. So only 50% of the average rainfall they will get. We call that as semi-arid regions. Less than 50%, 50% of long period average they will get. That means crops will not grow 100% with only rain. So there must be the need of irrigation. All the areas of today's Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, they need irrigation. Yes or no? Because the rain, there were no thick forest in that area. It was semi-arid region. So normally the rainfall will be less. So you might be wondered to listen that there were irrigation techniques employed by this Indus Valley civilization period. Must be, yes or no? Yes. Now, how irrigation techniques they were using? How could we just conclude like that without evidence? So let us see what were the evidence in support of these irrigation techniques. Sir, as I have said, Afghanistan is also part of the Harappan culture. Yes or no? Sir, in Afghanistan, there was one Harappan site called as Shortu Ghai. SHORTUGHAI. Shortu Ghai. So this Shortu Ghai is a site, Harappan site, present in the Afghanistan, right now Afghanistan, which was a part of Harappan culture, Harappan civilization. So this Shortu Ghai, just like Mohenjo-daro, it was another site, Shortu Ghai. Sir, in the Shortu Ghai, we found prehistoric, which was belonged to this period, traces of the canals. Sir, we found the traces of canals. That means canal irrigation system was prevalent in Afghanistan of that Harappan period. Harappan people were knowing canal irrigation technology. Sir, how advanced they were thinking. Imagine. Canal irrigation technology. Sir, not only that, if you see Punjab and, in the Punjab and the present day Kalibangan, Mohenjo-daro cities, as I have said in the previous class, that in every house we found a well. I have said to you, every house was having a well. That means they were taking the water out of that well. In the same way, in every field of this Punjab and Mohenjo-daro cities of this Harappan period, we were having dug up wells. Instead of canal irrigation, as like in the Shortu Ghai city, in these cities of Mohenjo-daro and Punjab, etc., Banawali, Kalibangan, we found wells. That means well irrigation technique was also there. They know it. Well irrigation, not only canal irrigation, as in Shortu Ghai site of the Afghanistan, they were also knowing the well irrigation technique. Very important. Sir, not only that, you will wonder if I say another point, that in the Dholavira, that is in the Gujarat, in the Dholavira city of Harappan civilization, in the Dholavira site, we found reservoirs, water reservoirs in the fields. Near to the fields, we found the water reservoirs. That means they even know the dam construction technology. On the small rivers, they construct a reservoir, a obstruction, maybe through rocks or maybe through some other. We don't know which material they used, but they were obstructing the flow of river and they were making a small reservoir out of it. And they constructed channels or canals through that. So this construction of dams, construction of reservoir technique, storage of water and using for agriculture in the other seasons of monsoon, non-monsoon seasons. So this technique of reservoirs was also known to them. We found reservoir in Dholavira. So agricultural technique, I am again concluding what agricultural techniques they know. They know the technique of broadcasting of the seeds. They know the technique of plowing the fields. They know the technique of multiple cropping. They know the technique of intercropping. They also know the technique of harvesting the crop through the tools, metal tools and the stone blade tools. They also have known the technique of irrigation. Not only one type of irrigation, but three different types of irrigation techniques, like canal irrigation in the Shortughai site of the Afghanistan, and the well irrigation in the sites of the Mohenjo-daro, Punjab and other northwestern portion, and reservoir technique, dam construction technique of irrigation in Dholavira, like Gujarat area sites. So you can imagine how advanced the human beings came from being a Paleolithic man who was just a food gatherer to Mesolithic man who became a food collector, specific food collector, to Neolithic man who started producing the food. And by this Indus Valley period, man was flourishing the agriculture with different technologies. This is how we reconstruct the period, and this is the reason why we, the modern Indians, always take pride. Most of the nationalist and populist leaders, you can see, they look back to this glorious period and they said this was actually the India was before the coming of Britishers. We were like that. This is how they say. They take pride in that. Yes or no? So this is about the agricultural technology. So now let us take one city specifically and let us study about everything about that, so that every city will be like that. This is the conclusion. We will take one famous city of Harappan period. Out of all these 8 to 9 cities, we will take one city and we will study in depth how the city was actually, how it was. What was the layout, how the houses were constructed, how the streets and drains were constructed, everything we see. Why we actually say this period as the glorious period? There must be a strong foundation, yes or no? So that foundational reasons we will study. We will take one city of this period. We will take the most famous city, that is Mohenjo-daro. Harappa is one city, Mohenjo-daro is one city, one big city. Kalibangan is one city, Banavali, like that 10 to 11 cities were there. But the most largest site of this Harappan period was Mohenjo-daro. The first site to be discovered was Harappa, but the largest city we found out of all these cities of Harappan period was Mohenjo-daro. So let us study about Mohenjo-daro in detail. Everything we now study. Let's enter into the Mohenjo-daro city. Along with me, you please be ready, and we will see how the city was there. And once you study Mohenjo-daro, then we can come to conclusion that every city was like that. Every 11 to 12 cities were in the similar fashion, just a little change in their layouts and etc. because they belong to the same culture. So we will study one city in detail, that is Mohenjo-daro.
This is your SR. Thank you.
अथ श्री महाभारत कथा।